Experience of an immigrant. My migration project is based on the story of my grandfather, Viktor Kabansky, and is supported by some research of the economical and political statistics of the time when he moved here. My historical question is, why did people leave the post-USSR countries as soon as it became possible, and why they didn't try to stay and contribute to developing their home countries? Millions of people from all around the world whose homeland experienced crisis of some kind wish they could live in a developed and safe place. The United States is one of the countries which can provide immigrants those conditions. Traveling to the US only got easy and comfortable the last 70 years. Before that it took people weeks and a lot of money to travel from one continent to another. Especially for people from the countries of the former USSR, who rushed there looking for a better life. According to the Statistical Yearbook of the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which was published in 1999, nearly 647,000 immigrants were granted legal permanent resident status during that year. No person moves from one place to another for no reason. There are push and pull factors which make people decide if they want to live somewhere. Push factors are things that make one leave the place where he lives now. For instance, it can be either an economical or social issue, war, or many other factors at the same time. Pull factors are things that make a place attractive for people to move to and stay there. Pull factors vary a lot. The most common ones are safety, stability, and job opportunities. Speaking of examples of push factors, living conditions in the USSR during the 1950s were very poor, and my grandfather was born in one of the biggest and most important industrial cities of the USSR in 1946. Dnipro was a city close to foreigners, as most of the new military technologies were developed and produced there. Low living conditions after the World War II included the lack of the most important resources. There was not enough food, clothes, and no adequate healthcare at all. When he graduated from high school with the best grades in all the subjects, he was easily enrolled to the course of radio physics and bionics in one of the Dnipro's engineering universities. After that he used to work in a lab of the university where he studied. He was a member of a developers team. They used to work on new technologies in the sphere of calculations. Life in the USSR wasn't nice, and people wanted to move to somewhere else for many reasons. The push factors in this case were lack of job opportunities, high crime rate, economical issues, and many others. Pull factors for my grandfather were a wider range of job opportunities and a development in the states and countries' economics, including how easy it was to travel around the world for American citizens. The unemployment rate of both countries is provided on these graphs. On the first one you can notice how the rate of unemployment rose in Ukraine in the middle of 90s, especially in 1994. It was 11.1% in Ukraine. And 5.2% in California in 1999, which is a huge difference. The population of Ukraine was decreasing rapidly as people were leaving the country since it became possible after the USSR decayed. According to the data posted on the official governmental resources, it's changed from 51.7 million of people in 1994 to 49.5 million in 1999. It's made a huge negative impact on the Ukrainian economics. The GDPs of both countries are maybe the best ways to understand on what stages of development their economics are. The graphs of the rapidly decreasing Ukrainian GDP and the US GDP, which was growing constantly for years. My grandparents were very lucky as it only took the immigration department less than 1 year to finish processing their case and to provide them visas. As soon as it became possible, my grandparents arrived to the US in April 1999 as refugees. My grandfather's brother, who had already been living in the US for a while, helped them to find an apartment to rent. And the Jewish community provided them an old used car. Some months later, Victor found a position in KLA-10 car. His job included testing computer processors and looking for defects or scratches on them. He liked his job and stayed on his position for almost 20 years until he retired. My grandmother has been working as a babysitter for many years already, and she still does her job. I asked Victor some of the most relevant questions connected to his experience as an immigrant. Did you face any difficulties caused by absence of citizenship? He said that the only problem he faced due to absence of citizenship was that neither he nor my grandmother had passports, so they couldn't travel outside the US. It was especially frustrating for them that they couldn't come back to Ukraine and visit their friends and family, whom they left behind, even though they could finally afford to go back there. Do you think you achieved the American dream? How do you perceive it? In his point of view, the so-called American dream is all about money. It's literally affording yourself more than a middle-class American. Here's a translation of his words. In one word, it can be described as superfluity. Victor says he's never even tried to pursue it. He also says he got closer to it just getting what he needs. My grandparents own a house and a car for each member of their family. They also are financially stable. Do you feel assimilated? He says that assimilation is an important part of moving somewhere, and of course he's assimilated. After all, he's been watching American TV, buying American food, co-working and building friendships with Americans, and there is no way he could avoid sometimes behaving just like people he met. What were the social and cultural differences you faced after moving here? First of all, he was surprised with the fact how talkative and friendly people are. How neighbors have block parties. He said it's something amazing when you see strangers in the street and they smile to you and you say hi to each other. It's something absolutely strange to me after living in Ukraine. Of course, it didn't cause any difficulties for me, but I felt confused very often at first. My historical question, which is mentioned in the beginning of the project, is why did people leave the post-USSR countries as soon as it became possible, and why they didn't try to stay and contribute to developing their home countries? Most of people who left these countries were absolutely disappointed with life in their countries, but were unable to leave. All the laws enforced people to stay, and even a simple idea of moving somewhere else could put you into trouble. All the countries of the former USSR were experiencing degradation. Their governments weren't ready for the USSR to decay, and both their laws and economics needed big changings to start working and developing in a proper way. The crime rate rose dramatically, and one just couldn't start his own business, because it would only bring him more difficulties and no profit. As an example of corruption, one of the best equipped armies in the world was totally wasted, and the Ukrainian atomic bombs were sold to other countries. Factories didn't get financial support and the industry started shutting down. Even the opening market and the help from other countries couldn't change the situation. Why would a scientist, engineer or businessman stay there if the conditions were much better in the countries of the West? And all the people who come up with new developments and laws were oppressed by criminals and the government which supported them. What is going on between the US and Ukraine governments? Political and economical relations between Ukraine and the US were very supportive since the moment Ukraine achieved independence. My grandfather's case is a good example of how open the US borders were for Ukrainians. Now Ukraine is in a deep state of crisis and the US provides Ukrainian government financial help. The main reason for the US to be so kind to Ukraine is that the US government wants Ukraine to be a part of NATO, so they can locate the NATO's armed forces right on the eastern border of Ukraine to put more pressure on the Russian Federation. Even though it got much harder to get to the US nowadays, it's still possible, as immigration bans don't influence most of the Ukrainian population. Smart and hard-working people, if they are lucky enough, have chances to find a better life in the US. Thank you for watching my presentation.